What's up, everybody? Welcome back to our Darkened Souls, a Soulthrough by Vaidnari's Verse. So, last time, we left on a bit of a cliffhanger. We learned part of how our struggles in real life reflect those of the undead we play as, and we started to talk about the meaning and the importance of true rest. And we're going to talk a good bit more about rest as the series goes on. But, the most important trait that we share in common with the undead is still to be seen. And the third question I posed when we started on our journey has been left to wait. That's because, like I said last time, they're two of the most important pieces of wisdom we'll need to understand if we're going to start our own real-life adventure toward ourselves and the fates we want to make. We pondered it since episode 1, pondered both of these questions. But this time around, the wait is over. So before I share that most vital connection between the undead and ourselves by showing it, let's go back to that last question, most daunting. What is it that keeps us, and so many people before us, like us, from moving forward on the road to our better selves, or our dreams? What is this stumbling block, and how can it have halted the dreams and growth of so many? Well, to start on that answer, but before I put my 2 cents in, let's get up and make our way to these huge doors across the border of our comfort zone, away from our first place of peace. And while we do that, let's take a second and perk our ears. You hear that? You might have heard it already, I realize. And if you're familiar with the game, you know exactly what that is. But if you're not, what you're hearing are the footfalls of the first boss. And if you're truly new, know nothing of what it actually looks like, that's all the better. Because it's exactly because we don't know what this obstacle really is or what it looks like that we and so many other people stumble on it, taken by surprise when it first arrives in our journey to become and learn more of ourselves. Because this first obstacle, like this setup to what's ahead, is actually 2 in 1. But only half of it is what any self-help book might say it is. The first of these 2 is completely formless, but it's as much of a door as the one behind us, and in reality, in front of us right now. It's your own shapeless fear, our own shapeless fear, called up by the question of whether we can become more, the question we asked at point B, whether we're ready to change, whether it will be worth it. It's a mass of questions with no answers we could ever find if they stop us from looking in our fear, and the fear that they bring, the oldest of them all, fear of the unknown. And it's all the stronger, all the worse, if you don't really know or understand what you want to make of your life, or who or what you really want to be. Because the idea of changing everything you've ever known or been comfortable with, for the sake of something you've never seen and might doubt exists, can and should be terrifying. In ways, it's even harder than following the dream you already know is yours. Because at least if you're struggling to follow a dream, you know what you're aiming and hoping for. You have your destination in mind. But there's another side to things. One we don't see often in the modern world. Fear is not always our enemy. There's a lot more to say about that, especially in concern to caution and courage, which we'll talk about soon enough. But for now, here's the thing. We live in a world that is both demonized and glorified fear. We either watch it in horror movies and feel relief that we're not the ones in the film, or we avoid it in any form. We are either fascinated by it from afar, or paralyzed by its nearness. And what could make a person more fearful, and what could be nearer than the idea of turning their own world, everything they've gotten comfortable with and are used to, upside down? I know there's probably excitement or relief to get your dungeon cell key, like I felt. But there's still that shapeless door of fear to go through. Our worry that it might not be possible to change or grow as much as we want, or that we might not be able to change or grow at all. There's worry that we might make a mistake, like we have with so many other things before, and have our hopes proven wrong. Fear of that risk alone keeps most people from even thinking about it. In the same way we avoid thinking about the dentist to avoid thinking about cavities, or the doctors to think about shots. We're much harder stuff to handle. But here is one of the many places where you stand out. If you're still watching, you have invested your time in this, which means you're giving the Soulthrough a chance to benefit. The door of our fear is one only we hold the key to, and that key is moving forwards in spite of the fear, daring to imagine we can be normal, and that we will be. These doors are huge and look daunting, most likely to anybody new, perhaps immobile. But once we make the move to push past our own mental gateway, moving forwards from there can be as simple as the press of 2 buttons and a hearty push. So, let's get on with that, shall we? Now, if you're new, you're probably wondering, where the heck is the boss? No one over here, and no one over here, and no one that way. Well, I feel that's another way that the game mirrors real life. There's a practical answer, and there's this one. How it relates. Because if we were taught anything about how following our dreams worked as kids, we were shown over and over again that the only thing that could get in the way of our dreams was a bad guy or our own doubt, which was easily shrugged off. There is doubt, of course, but we've tackled half of that problem just by opening the door, right? Well, what if I told you that there probably isn't actually a bad guy in your way? And what if I told you that if those movies wanted to be more accurate, the hero or the heroine wouldn't have any idea that someone was in the way of their dreams or ever would be? And that when they did show up, the hero or heroine would be staring at their dearest friends or family in shock. That's the boss that no one sees coming. A great fictional man, Albus Dumbledore, once said, "It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to your enemies, but a great deal more to stand up to your friends." Someone much more negative, and perhaps someone in your own life, though through different words, suggested that each of us is just a drop in the ocean of people, just another average person. Well, Dumbledore and J.K. Rowling were completely right. But that last guy, is actually half right, too. Those who haven't found their calling or don't choose to seek it make up drops, like we have until now, in an unhappy ocean. But when we decide to move, we make ripples, and ripples make waves. To some people around us, that's only uncomfortable. But to those closest to us, it can be terrifying. And the way they react, if they aren't following their own dreams, can be terrifying too. In many ways, much more than some distant enemy or villain. These are the people who know you, who love you, and who've been there for you, who care about your future. What does it mean that their opinions, the opinions you value so much, are so negative about what you have such hope for or dare to dream about? But here's the thing. Unlike what we've been taught to imagine, the people who will stand up to ask what you're doing because they care for you are not the enemy. Nor are they actually the real obstacle. Their fear for you, combined with your new fear of upsetting or disappointing people so close to you. All your doubts riled up all over again and combined. That is the obstacle. That huge mass of fear that will accompany any great change or undertaking you try to start in your life. And let me tell you something about that. It can hit like a train, and it stops most people in their tracks. But we're not most people, are we? If you've gotten this far, you know where this is going. So let's see how well we fare. Ow. You know, really do to have something better than this can opener. Ow. Well, that could have gone better. And if we played the way we should have, it would have gone better. But there's a killer point to be made in this, and one I think is well worth the risk of being called a terrible player because I died there. Where better to talk about this unexpected obstacle, or rather expected in this case, than our first bonfire. Our place to rest and to plan. To recover from what's probably a shocking resistance to what feels so right and full of hope. When this hits us in real life, I don't think any of us knows what to do without guidance. And like that attempted boss battle showed, once we put our dreams out there to the people we care about most, the door shuts behind us. There's no taking that back by running to our comfort zone. Our friends and family have heard our hearts, and their fears rise up in answer. Because the nature of dreams is to be larger than life, risky or uncertain. Nothing great was ever easy to achieve, nor was any great adventure very safe. So the people who love us most stop us, or try to protect us, or even come up with safer alternatives that may or may not lock us away in some new comfort zone, some new asylum. But we usually think we only have two ways to respond to our shock. Either we deny ourselves and allow that fear to put us back into our comfort zone and readjust the shackles and try to forget about our dungeon cell key, or we resist as best we can, or think we can, and likely fail miserably. I chose to die rather than progress, because in real life, there's no way of knowing how to react when the people who know you best call out your newborn hopes and dreams as foolish, or even pointless. So running to that door around the corner would not have been honest to what this reflects in real life. And there is a door to the left. Maybe you saw it, I'm not sure. But it was there, just as there will always be a door when we really need it, or some place to stand on, or some kind of emotional safety, so we can rethink how to act. And that's the third option we don't know we have, which I'll talk more about next time. But let's go ahead and use this rest at the bonfire near the end of this episode to talk about how to move forwards by reviewing what happened and how it mirrors real life. Why exactly did we lose? If you're new, you'll probably have more than a few reasons, given how big and tough that boss looks and how hard it hits. But the real reason for this mirrors exactly why we fail if we try to take on the fears of those we love without making some changes first. In the game, it's because the weapon we're using was nowhere near strong enough to deal any real damage, and everything we were wearing was weighing us down. In real life, the answer is kind of similar. Very similar, really. We fail to change the minds of those we love the first go-around, silence their fears, because we're thinking in the same ways that have kept us stuck for so long. And the mental and emotional armor we wear, whether it feels safe or comfortable, is weighing us down and holding us back from real change, real progress. But remember when I said I wasn't finished sharing about how the struggles of the undead relate to ours in real life? Well, here's the best and biggest thing that we share in common. We might feel like the failures or mess-ups we deal with from day to day are wounding or even killing us inside. But here's the biggest thing to take away from this episode, if you take away nothing else. We, just like the undead, are able to pick ourselves back up from any failure or pain, put the pieces back together, and soldier on to try again, getting better and sharper with every attempt, until, as you're going to see, we conquer that obstacle and grow all the stronger for it. Now, it's only natural to doubt that. I don't know your struggles yet, so how do I know we can come back from anything? Well, let me tell you a story. A story about a young man named Rick. Rick loved music from an early age and started playing the drums when he was 9. At 15, he'd gotten so good at it that a budding new band in the area picked him up after they split with their old drummer. And he quit school, which I do not advise, to throw everything he had into it. Time passed, and the band started picking up some serious work, even as a supporting act for, of all bands, AC/DC. And everything seemed to be looking up. But then, one day, Rick got into a terrible car accident, one that severed his arm. And after it became infected, when doctors tried to reattach it, left him without half of what had taken him so far. Can you imagine how devastated Rick must have been? Or his bandmates, knowing they would have to drop him if they had any hope of growing. None of them had any way to make a living for themselves without the band. But all of them knew that Rick would be even worse off. He hadn't even finished high school. He had no prospects. I don't know about you, but I probably would have collapsed and despaired if something like that had happened to me. But here's how Rick handled his loss. Instead of throwing in the towel anyone else would have hurled as hard as they could, he put his mind to figuring out how he could still play in the band. How a one-armed man could keep playing the drums as well as anyone with two. And despite how no one would imagine such a thing could possibly be done, Rick pulled it off, making a machine that let him use his feet along with his remaining arm to play the drums. And to any fan of Def Leppard, Rick Allen even earned himself the nickname, the Thunder God. And you know what the craziest thing is? When someone asked him in an interview years later if he would have wanted to keep his arm if he could go back in time, he said no. Went on to say that what he'd experienced by losing his arm, he would not take back. And he even ended it with, and I quote, "The human spirit is so strong." That is the biggest truth of our dungeon cell key. That kind of resilience exists in all of us. And it goes hand in hand with our potential. Nothing worth doing, nothing great, was ever easy. We all have hard times to live through, no matter how successful we are or become. But like I said last time, if you're here right now, you are living proof that everything you've ever faced was nowhere near strong enough to stop. That, I think, is more proof than anything else I could say. You yourself are proof that we can survive anything. And I hope in the future we will all be proof that we can do more than survive, that we can thrive, and that what can't kill us or keep us down will make us stronger. But first, we've got to beat this first obstacle. And next time, we'll get started down that road. For now, however, let's go over what we've learned so far this time, before I leave a few good questions to ponder till next time. Life can be rough or difficult at times. Like the undead, our struggles can make us feel like we're withering away, or that we were never meant to have what we truly want, that we are just reaching too high or too far. But just like the undead and anyone else of greatness, we can survive and thrive past much greater hardship than we think. In fact, we already have. We can always get up, no matter what happens. We also know that no great stumbling block is ever truly obvious, and we know that the first obstacle to achieving greatness is actually two. Both are daunting, but daring to dream can make the first half of the battle a breeze. But we also know that if we want to beat this obstacle's second, harder half, we'll need to make changes to ourselves to ease both our own fears and those of the people who love us enough to worry for our futures. But we are left with new questions, piling on the old. How on earth can we beat this boss with only a wannabe shank? And how can we move faster with such heavy armor? You now know there's a door we can run through to the left that can get us safely past our enemy, but it's still inside the asylum. There's no way out of this place without beating that demon first. Just like we can't pursue our dreams or ourselves fully unless the people who love us most are on board with it. So what can we do? Well, the answer is clean cut, if not entirely easy. We need a better weapon, and we need to do something about our armor. And on top of that, we need some way to protect ourselves when and if any of the demon's blows connect. Our armor can only handle so much. The challenges we face to become our better selves are greater, so they require better tools. And we know from our own dungeon cell keys that we have everything we'll need to succeed and grow inside us from the start. But how can we unearth these better tools? And what do they reflect in real life? Well, next time, we're going to do the only thing we can do when we're unsure of how to move. At any point in life. We're going to rest at our bonfire, review what we can do to start changing for the better now, and make those changes so we can move forward from this comfort zone and through that door. So we can start to search this asylum, search ourselves for those better tools. And on the way, we're going to come to understand the value of finding and keeping a shield. And that avoiding the demon next time isn't running away, but retreating to fight again. And this time, to win. Like this one, the next episode is just a click away. But in case you need to take a breather, or head back into the flurry of your life, loud or quiet it might be, I'll go ahead and leave you with a few new questions to ponder. What might the armor of our character reflect in our own lives, and how might it be important? What could the weapons we fight with in the game mirror mentally, and how might changing them up be for better or worse? And lastly, what could a shield represent in our own daily battles, and how can know how to use it best mean the difference between victory and defeat? I can't tell you how eager I am to find those answers with you. So come back soon. I'm Hiram, and this has been episode 2 of Our Darkened Souls, a Soulthrough by Vidnai's Verse. Till next time, peace be with you.